Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another webinar in the Staffing Hub webinar series. We're really excited to have you all here today. Before we get started, I have just a couple of housekeeping items for you. First, if you have any questions during the presentation, just drop those into the questions panel and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Second, we'll send out the recording following the broadcast, so be on the lookout for that. Today's presenter, Ben Olson, is CEO and founder of Essium. As a software engineer, he's passionate about performing business process optimization and finding innovative technology solutions. Ben and his team of staffing industry veterans have thoughtfully built an onboarding solution for staffing companies to automate manual tasks, simplify managing compliance, and generate significant cost savings. In today's webinar, Ben will examine how onboarding technology fits into your recruiting strategy, best practices, and methods for measuring success. And Ben, I will go ahead and pass it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for taking some time out of your busy days to join me for this webinar. Today, I will focus on how onboarding affects your recruiting process and things to focus on when evaluating your process, how technology can be used to improve it, and how to ensure that that investment you make in technology has a positive impact on your business. Before we go anywhere else, let's start with our first poll question.
Okay, so our first poll is, what is your top challenge when onboarding candidates? Finding onboarding requirements, ensuring completeness and accuracy, determining onboarding status, duplicate data entry, or chasing candidates? I'll give you all just a few minutes to, or I should say a few seconds to enter in your answers here. All right, just a couple more seconds. Okay. So it looks like chasing candidates and determining onboarding status were the top challenges, followed by duplicate data entry and finding onboarding requirements.
All right. All right, so that's, yeah, we'll probably dive into a few things about chasing candidates in a little bit and how I might be able to go about improving some of those steps that you can take to maybe engage them a little bit quicker or certainly easier in the onboarding process. All right, so as we kind of talk about where onboarding fits in your process, obviously in your funnel here, finding talent is probably top of mind. If you don't have any candidates, there's not too many you can start and actually onboard. But when you do finally have a placement and they go to this part of the process, clearly onboarding is a hurdle you have to get through in order to have them start on their first day. And there's a lot that you're asking of that candidate to do to get through that onboarding process. So let's kind of look at a few things that come up during that and what you might be requiring of a candidate. Employers have a lot of different tasks that they need a candidate to participate in through various customer requirements or government requirements, things to get payroll set up. Often a lot of tasks, and those tend to just kind of keep piling up quickly. But a candidate really just wants to get paid. They don't really care what you need to do to be compliant. They want to get onto the job and start making some money. And what that tends to do is it creates this friction in the process because as an employer, you have a lot of tasks that you're required to get through. And as a candidate, you don't especially want to go through any of those tasks, but obviously it's a requirement that's being put in front of you that needs to be done in order to start your job. And that friction can often result in a lot of different problems, one of them chasing candidates. Other issues then are recruiters, because they're chasing candidates, are not spending time onboarding more, recruiting more candidates and filling more jobs. You may have candidates that then are not returning the right paperwork, or just not getting through the process because they don't fully understand what needs to be done. That's one part of the problem, and then there's some other factors that kind of come in too that really point to why onboarding technology should be kind of part of your recruiting strategy. I've got 3 here that I'll go through. The first one really has to do with the fact that most of the workforce now is comprised of millennials or younger. Generations are moving in. All of the baby boomers are mostly moving out now, and all of that generation has grown up with technology. They've probably had a phone in their hand practically since they were a baby. And so there becomes a lot of expectations then around what they're going to have when it comes to finding jobs or going through those processes, not even from your candidates, but also from your clients, because the workforce is changing for them and they're looking for suppliers who have a technology focus. And then your internal staff that you're hiring to go through these processes, they're also looking for that. So it's a big factor to ensure that you're looking at the entire process and ensuring that you have technology solutions all the way across the board, from the process of recruiting your talent to onboarding your talent and beyond. Another area that definitely is will raise a flag to ensuring that you have onboarding technologies. Temporary staffing platforms are putting that in there. It's part of the technology solution that they're offering, and traditional staffing firms are kind of lagging behind in some ways on adopting technology to do some of these things. And in order to be competitive with those platforms and to demonstrate to candidates and clients that you have at least the technology portion taken care of, it doesn't matter what else you bring to the table. If you can't compete here, then you're one step behind. And then the final one that I thought was interesting is a bit of a disparity as to where success is being measured. There's clearly a lot of firms that look at and say, well, we've succeeded when we've got the offer accepted versus they actually started. But your customers are going to be measuring you on, well, if the person's not here doing the work I need, you didn't fill the job, so that doesn't really help me. So being able to include that onboarding into the recruiting strategy and ensure you're measuring success across the entire path all the way to when they start is going to be important to demonstrate to your clients that you are providing a great service and that you're fulfilling their needs in a timely manner and to their satisfaction. So shifting gears now to some best practices that you can employ as part of your onboarding strategy, especially as you're putting in technology. The first one I have is make it easy to access. And what I mean by that is often with technology, you're going to have a login. And that turns into almost the first barrier and major friction point to getting through your onboarding process. And some of the things that I see as maybe ways around this are to use something they already have, maybe like a Facebook, LinkedIn login, so one of their social logins. Now they don't need to worry about another username and password. And another one is something called like a magic link that gets them in right away, and they don't have to worry about username and password. Maybe it's something you push off until later, but at least that first touch point that you have with them doesn't have that barrier that they have to worry about and try to get through. The second point is only ask for what you need. Oftentimes I've seen the current process is take all these documents and materials, put them on an email and send them off, and basically ask the candidate, okay, go through this, figure out what you need to do, and then send me the stuff back that applies to you. Well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. That's just putting that workload over on the candidate, instead of looking at it more from the perspective of what's the job, what is this candidate's current situation, and actually creating more of a unique path for them that's personalized, that only gathers what they need for themselves and nothing more. And then the final one is to be responsive to questions. I think obviously this is probably obvious and important as well, but I think one of the biggest things to think about is that in today's modern age, everybody is so used to getting things so quickly. You can post something on Facebook, post it on whatever, and you get responses pretty quickly. So when you take that and transition it over towards onboarding and asking questions about or concerns about the job and being able to respond quickly, that's going to be maybe a difference between you getting that person started, or if you take too long, one of your competitors kind of swooping in and maybe they became more responsive and now that person shifts over to them. So we'll pause now for poll question number 2.
What technology would most improve your onboarding process? Integrated messaging, task automation, dynamic forms, document verification, or accurate reporting? All right, just a few more seconds on this one. Okay. So it looks like the number 1 technology is task automation, followed by dynamic forms, document verification, and accurate reporting.
All right. Well, that's perfect, because going into one of my 3 areas, automation is definitely one of those key areas. And I have a couple other ones. The first one being content, and you did talk about dynamic forms being one of them. That's definitely an important piece, because when you can pull all the content together in one place and push that out to a candidate as they're going through their onboarding process without having to maybe do some of it in one tool, maybe you have to email some other things to them, ask them to print them out, fill it out, scan it back to you and everything, that obviously creates a lot of additional friction. So being able to find technology that can take care of all the different things that you need to worry about and provide as part of that onboarding process is going to let you ensure that you're providing it all in one spot and all at one time. The second one, automation. This one here, I really see it as an opportunity to really flip things over on its head and say, normally you're going to be the quarterback and run the process and use a tool when you need to. But if you want automation to come in, then you're going to make the computer basically be the quarterback, run the show, and then reach out to a human being when necessary to do different tasks that need to be done along the process. When you've done that, now you have technology basically driving along and taking care of all those repetitive tasks and ensuring you get the consistency, and then saving everybody else the time that they would normally have to spend going in and figuring out what needs to be done and taking care of doing those tasks. And then the third one is communication. This is where you have the opportunity to really define your brand. This is really the part of being a traditional staffing company that is going to give you that white glove and approach to things by being able to communicate and help candidates either helping them find the different jobs that might work best for them, helping them answer any questions or concerns they have as part of getting onto their job. And it's one of those places where I think there's a lot of improvement that can be made, because one of the number one reasons candidates view recruiters unfavorably is because of communication, almost 50%. And so if you can improve this area and really put a lot of focus here, then that's going to really start to differentiate you from your competition, and really, I guess, delight your candidates, because they're going to feel like, they've had that kind of personalized experience that they're hoping to get out of working with you. All right, we'll pause again here for one more poll question.
All right. What's the most time-consuming aspect of onboarding? Entering data, verifying accuracy, communicating with candidates, tracking onboarding status, or determining onboarding requirements? All right, just a few more seconds to get those answers in. Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty good split across the board. Entering data, verifying accuracy, communicating with candidates, and determining onboarding requirements, all ranked.
All right, well, that doesn't entirely surprise me. I think it's hard sometimes to pick out the one thing that's causing you the most headaches as you go through that process. And as we go ahead and look a little bit more as to where time's being spent and where time savings can be picked up, I think we can definitely identify that there is a split there, and that they all definitely are a bit of a time suck when it comes to doing the onboarding process. So as we go and start looking at success of what does technology bring to the table, and how can it improve different areas of your recruiting process, because it sits at the bottom of the funnel, all the different typical recruiting statistics that you're measuring and trying to pay attention to, they're all going to be affected by it. But today I want to really kind of dig into this cost per hire a little bit, because I think when you're trying to quantify whether or not the technology is doing something for you, having some hard dollar amounts you can work with really help illuminate where the cost savings are coming. And I think that for most people, that's going to be the first thing they ask. How much does it cost, and what money are you going to save me? So let's talk a little bit about what's the cost of filling a job. The most common definition is going to be around what does it cost to market a job, to get candidates, and then recruit them and get them placed. I look at a couple other parts of the process. There's what did it take to get the job order in the first place, then your recruiting costs, and then what kind of time and energy is going into the onboarding process. And that kind of defines your total cost that you're working with per hire. For the onboarding portion of this, one of them is going to be your background drug and health screening. That tends to be kind of a fixed cost that, based on client requirements, you're gonna have to spend money on. But the rest of it then starts to go down into the administrative time that it takes to do different tasks. And I picked out 5 tasks that we could look at here, and I assigned some numbers to it of how many minutes per hire you may be spending on it. Everybody's gonna have slightly different numbers depending on what they have to do. But then if you look at that before automation, and we toss in automation to say, well, we're going to chop out a lot of these manual tasks, and we're also going to improve that communication portion as well, so that instead of spending all that time on communicating and emailing and texting everything candidates, maybe we can shift a little bit of the more common repeatable communications into the automation, and then still leave room for that personal touch that you can still outreach to candidates, answer questions, follow up on any concerns they may have. and really help them, feel comfortable for their first day of work. And that turns into an 80% speed up. And when you look at that, you might say, well, 50 minutes, that's not too bad. Getting to 10, that's great. But if you were to start trying to scale that up to 100 per week of hires, and you start looking at how many hours that is, that's 2 people without automation. You plug in automation, and you're going to get it down to half a person. It means you need to have a whole person, but at least the other half of that person's time could be spent on some of those value add tasks for your organization. The second component to the cost here is the error rate, and engineers love studying this. And one of the things that they've come up with is per 100 manual tasks, whether that's data entry, comparing 2 pieces of information together, whatever type of manual steps that you have in your process, you're going to make on average 10 to 30 mistakes along the way. And the research has found that costs you about 30% of your revenue per year. So when you take that and you look at, well, what is that 30%? How am I getting to 30%? Well, first of all, there's time wasted. You make a mistake, a week later, it comes to light that you made the mistake, and now everyone's kind of in that fire drill mode, trying to take care of fixing the problem that occurred because of maybe an innocent mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. You have lost revenues from maybe candidates that, because you made an error, they just don't want to work with you anymore. So now that entire revenue you would have made on that job just got lost. And then the final one, which is one of those bigger risks, if there's a mistake that goes undetected and you get audited down the line, what is that going to turn into from either fees, or maybe a customer just becomes upset with the fact that you made so many mistakes and you didn't do the background checks correctly, or whatever it might be, and you end up losing a contract. So some of them are a little more, maybe less likely, but there are still consequences to it, and it's something to be aware of, and it does factor in to those numbers. So if we take those 2 pieces now and we take them and put them into more of a real example, I've made a hypothetical job that someone only works 40 hours on that job, and for the bill rate and pay rate that you're getting for it, you get $600 in revenue, and you're paying them out $450, which means you've got $150 left to run your business. And if you look at our costs then before technology, we have our administrative cost, that was the 50 minutes, and then we have that 30% of revenue, and I put that at $36 here as kind of an average cost to assign to it, and you take that off of your 150, and you're going to be left with $97. Now we plug in automation, and we're going to say that our technology in this situation now is going to cost us $10 per onboarding, and our 10 minutes for administrative tasks are going to cost us now just the $3 instead of the $16. And typically, when you add in automation and are reducing the amount of opportunities for error, you're going to see a tenfold decrease in errors, which this would be then $3.60 versus the $36 for errors. And add that in with your $10, you're going to have a total of $16.93, leaving you with $133 after those costs. Now we'll take these 2 numbers, plug them into our before and afters, and do some math with those. We subtract them, we're going to end up with $35 in savings. So on a $10 technology investment, you are now getting a return on that of 360%. And so one of the challenges I typically will get asked is, well, I don't have really room in my gross profit, my margin area for a $10 investment. But my response is, well, it's not a $10, it's not $10 of cost so much as it's $10 towards creating that extra savings because of what technology is doing for you. And besides those hard dollars, you can look at that is that the time that you've now saved is going to be able to go into those more value added types of things where you can then build up your brand with more time communicating with candidates, more time doing various different tasks like filling more jobs, all those different things that I think that most people would rather be doing with their day than the more clerical work that you'd get with the manual tasks. And there's clearly room to improve. So if you go look at what some of the averages are industry-wide, I think the one that you can see here is that the average fill ratio of 50%, if you could bump that up a little bit, clearly there's an opportunity for more revenue to come in when you have time to work on that. And the other one has to do with your NPS score, whether clients and candidates are going to recommend you to a friend. And a lot of this has to do with communication. And if you're able to focus in on those types of things, then you're going to see these numbers improve as well, which is a very good metric for establishing whether or not you're effectively, your brand recognition is out there and looking good as a company within the industry. And in your markets, then you're going to be able to be that much more competitive because you've gone through and managed these things quite well. So some closing thoughts here. Onboarding, I hope I've made the point that onboarding is an important part of your funnel, that getting to that point where they're starting, you need to make sure that you have a focus on it, and that technology really is what's going to help you get through that process as efficiently as possible. Even though there are a lot of tasks that can come up as part of onboarding, at least with technology, you can hopefully get rid of some of the more manual tasks, cut down on mistakes, and give more time back to your most important asset, your people, to really help drive your business forward. And then finally, setting expectations. If you're going to invest in technology, you want to challenge your technology partners that are providing you that technology to show you how they can really create a return on your investment. Being able to go in and say, here's the things I was doing before, and here's the things I was doing after I put the technology in, and really seeing that there's a quantifiable difference between the before and after. So that ends the main part of the presentation here. We can open it up for some questions and answers.
Thanks so much, Ben. We do have some questions for you. And the first is, what is the biggest challenge you see when implementing onboarding technology?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting because I know that obviously the top thing is having the task automation, and I feel like that's probably one of the more challenging areas, not just even with onboarding, but really with any technology that has an automation type of element to it. It's hard to automate something that you don't know what it is that's being automated. So part of getting something implemented is to really be able to explain what your process is today and where you want to see automation, and being able to put those tasks in place so that the computer can repeat them over and over again. Because if you have a bad process and you put that into a computer to automate, it will automate a bad process for you very well. And that's not usually something you're going to want to have. So there is always a little bit of work to kind of look at your process and think through, what do you want to automate, and what would that look like is like the best process that you could probably make.
Thanks so much. The next one we have is, what is the most important feature I should look for in an onboarding solution?
That's another good question. I think the one that would probably stand out as obvious for a lot of people is the mobile capability. And that's true. That maybe is more of like a no-brainer today, is that should be there. But for me, I think one thing to look at is also, how does it go about enabling you to maybe grow in the future as you start to become more technology savvy with your business and your processes. Things that stand out that you can look for that would give you that feel that that's there are things like, do they have an API that you could maybe one day leverage if you had an IT team, or maybe you outsourced some development to add some features in, that you can use with the product to accelerate and leverage the product better for special things within your organization. Another one has to do with, what kind of abilities within the tool do you have to extend out what it's doing in a way that as you become, again, more mature with the technology and understand it better and see how it's helping you with your business, what can it do later on down the road to add on, or as business needs change, adapt quickly to your requirements so that you're not in a position where you've just outgrown it and now it can no longer meet your needs, and you're going to now go look for something else and possibly change your processes around another tool.
Thank you so much for that. And the final question is, how do I prepare to implement an automated onboarding solution?
That's another good question. I guess it kind of follows on to the first one about what's what's some of the challenges. So really the first step is looking at what you're doing today, both manually, automatically, whatever you might have, and start to kind of list out what does that process look like, where do I think that I want the computer to take over, and start to plug in that human element to kind of let the computer quarterback for you. And if you can start to make that list of tasks that you feel can be shifted to the computer and outline what that looks like, that's going to give you a good starting point. Because if there's a place where you want to maybe change your process a bit in order to optimize certain things as you start to think about technology, you'll be able to go out into the marketplace and look at technologies that can help with some of those specific needs, and make sure that as you are evaluating, you're able to ask good questions about, do you have this feature? Do you have that feature? Can it do this? Because now you've kind of looked at that and made some decisions about what you would like to have in order to solve some of your specific problems, whether it's something related to one of your client requirements or something just within the industry or location that you're serving. Those are all important things that if you can make sure that they're addressed, then that's going to ensure that those automated abilities then will actually serve you the best.
Thank you so much. That's it for questions.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Ben, for the excellent presentation. Keep an eye on your inbox for the recording of the event, and have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.